excuse my voice and everything. I've been sick for about a month, and there's no days off in fishing, so it's got a little bit difficult to get good. I felt pretty good, except for I guess the pollen is off the chart this year or something. I mean, it's just had sinus problems, and I had a respiratory infection, an ear infection, and everything. So I'm starting to feel good, but you know, it'll drag on you. I know some of these guys in here. I've known Mike probably for 30 years. Mike Mahoney. Didn't know he was going to be here, so I'm sure I'm going to get heckled today by Mike. But no, it's always good to see Mike, and most of you guys I don't know. But I grew up in Oldsmar, Florida, and upper part of the Tampa Bay, and it's Reggie Roundtree. We're getting ready to do a segment on Channel 10, and I don't want to bore you with me. We'll talk about Snook and kind of have more of an interactive. Usually, what I do is I just have an interactive conversation with everybody, and we talk about things that you guys want to hear. There's a wide range of expertise in this room. I can just tell by hearing the introductions. So I want to make everybody happy as far as getting what they want to get out of the talk here. And you know, to be honest with you, it's kind of, to me, I just enjoy talking about fishing, you know, and telling stories about it. But as you can see, I target Snook. I did the first national TV show in Tampa Bay in Snook, and back in 1995, I think it was, on the Tennessee Network, Nashville Network. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
With outdoor magazine, I think it was. Trying to think of it. Anyway, there was a Tennessee Network. Also did one with Stu Apt in 2000, where we just targeted Snook. Just recently did one with Mike. I don't know if anybody saw the beach fishing show that ran a bunch of times last year on the Real Animals TV show.
That's why you're here.
That was me. Yeah, we had a pretty good day. We didn't land as many fish as we wanted to, but anyway, that's what I do. I tarp and fish, I red fish, I trout fish, but I'd rather fish I'd rather snook fish than anything else. And a lot of my clientele want to go after, you know, large snook, so I've kind of got backed into that. It's not always what I want to do, but we wind up doing it. There's a Kobe got mixed in it was late last night. You got a Kobe mixed in there. But anyway, so that's what we do. We fish for large snook, and this is what we're going to talk about today. I brought tackle, I brought artificials to go over, you know, any questions that you guys have and show you actually what some of the plugs that I use when I actually get to fish artificial. I do have some very good fishermen that fish with me that catch a lot of fish artificially with artificials. And I tell you, if I had my choice, that's what I'd rather do, especially this time of the year. Right now, there's a few. Anybody recognize that guy? Anybody heard of Mike Trout? He's a baseball player. Yeah. He fishing with me. I didn't. Yeah. He had just lost a 40-inch fish right there, and I'm thinking, man, Mike Trout, 40-inch fish. That's gonna be really good. I had a video of it and everything. But anyway, we'll talk about big fish. We'll talk about artificials. We'll talk about live bait. Bait right now I don't know how many people have gotten bait already. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of scarce right now.
Good. That's good. No, bait is tough right now. I was getting bait 2 weeks ago, and I haven't. There's fish on here that I've got here that I haven't posted on Facebook yet because I don't want 5 guys following me around looking, because I mean, the one thing you can guarantee if you find bait right now this time of the year, that's one of the recent ones. That was Tuesday. I think I got them 3 in a row. That was 2 days ago. Mike, when I come in, about 2 days ago, and look at this hoss that we caught. This next one. That's a hoss right there. Yeah, that's a
Did you
close
bring
up.
the one at the trout?
Huh?
Did you bring the one at the trout?
The trout.
Yeah, a big trout that you caught one day this week too.
Oh, yeah. No, I didn't. I didn't bring that.
Yeah, but the size of
That was
it.
big.
Yeah,
How big was that?
that fish was 43 inches because both of those guys, the first one was 40 inches and a half, 40 and a half inches with a 19-inch girth because both these guys are regulars that come down from New York and fish with me. They both wanted to get replicas done. They both wound up getting 40-inch fish. And the second one that was a 42-inch fish there. The second one was 43 and a quarter, but it was for this time of the year, it had a 23-inch girth. Yeah, 20, which is, excuse me? I'm snook fishing. Yeah, I'm snook fishing. Anyway,
With us?
before we go into, I wanted to tell a story. I'm starting to get into telling a story, and I'm going to tell you a story about a personal experience I had about taking a picture of the fish that's not yours, because this is important. Don't ever take a picture of a fish that's not yours. I took a guy a couple years ago, and we're fishing in a pass, and there's 500 snook in front of me. And the first cast, he wanted me to fish with him. There's me and another boat, and between us there's 500 fish. And they're all 35-inch plus fish. So we catch a 38-inch fish, and he's like, I've never caught a fish that big. I've never seen a fish that big. I said, he goes, can I take a picture of it? I said, no, man, Carl, please, I don't want you to take a picture with this fish. It's bad karma. It really is bad karma. First cast, I said, man, we're gonna kill him. Look at that guy over there. That guy's catching fish too. We're gonna kill him. Just fish. He goes, oh please, the sun's coming up and everything. And so Carl takes. I said, okay, man. So, it's just I'm not for this. He takes a picture of the fish. We don't get a bite the rest of the day.
What?
Not only did we not get a bite the rest of the day, the boat next to us didn't get a bite the rest of the day. And they're like, what the hell's going on, man?
What was the tide doing?
It was ripping. It should have,
Somebody have a banana
but I
on
figured
the
it out.
Yeah, did you have a banana on the boat?
No. No banana.
Oh,
But
I heard it, taking a picture.
after I looked at the picture very carefully, I figured out that it was bad karma. This is why we didn't catch. But the other boat was in the picture too. So they were in the picture too, in the background. So anyway, be very, very careful about taking pictures of other fish. That's a big fish too. Anyway. Yeah, that's a river monster right there.
What river?
Monster River. Anyway,
How many
so
pounds of those fish were? Roughly,
the large fish that we caught the other day was 26 pounds.
26
That the 43-incher was 26 pounds. The other one was like 19 pounds or something. It was a lot smaller. It was a 40-inch fish. It was only 2 3/4 inches smaller, but it was a lot skinnier. So you'll see it when you look at it again.
All white bait?
Yeah, it was on white bait too.
white bait.
Yeah, sardines, for those of you that, scale sardines. And I was lucky enough, 2 weeks ago, I was getting bait easy. Now,
Yeah,
it's gone.
It's kind of a question I've got. I went out Tuesday and had a hard time finding bait.
Yeah.
And wound up way out on one of the towers.
Mhm.
That's pretty typical this time of year? Or?
Yeah, it's typical this time of year, and
And I didn't get much. I mean,
now, and that's typical this time of year too. And there's bait all over the place, but the problem is this time of the year, and I think what's more important than anything right now, something's about to happen. The bait's moving around. I've talked to my buddies at the Skyway that are getting bait. Like, that's where I'm gonna probably get bait tomorrow is the Skyway Bridge. But it's not easy there either. It's all of a sudden it's starting to move. And what's happening is, I think I think these baits are gonna move on this new moon. And then hopefully, I think it's gonna be on the flats early this year. Cause it was on the flats late last year, you know, I mean, this year, it was on the flats this year. I got it on the flats, you know, early in the year. Anyway, but big snook are getting back to bait. Bait right now is very, very tough, but if you can get it and you can get a good incoming tide on these creeks, especially in these creeks in here, I mean, it's all in how you're fishing the fish and where you're at the right time. These fish, you can't see these fish at all. Any of these big fish, you can't see them. You have to know where they're at. So I know what they do in the creek that we were fishing for that big one. One of them was caught, or two of the more recent ones was caught out on the flats. But what happened was, this time of the year, you know, the water temperature might be 67 degrees in a creek, you know, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And the tide might be going out. When that tide starts coming in off of the flats, and just maybe a degree might be enough to turn them. And that's what happens. So you gotta make sure that sometimes you're a little bit early, but you have to kind of make sure that you're in the right place at the right time, because we had 3 chances at big fish the other day, and we got lucky we got 2 of them. So, you know, I mean, the time before, when I told you that it was Tuesday, we had 4 or 5 fish that were big, and we caught 1. So that's snook fishing, you know. It's just, anybody that tells you right now that they're not going to chase big baits might be telling you a lie. So even if it's cold, these big fish, now the one thing that you have to do with these big fish is you have to let that bait, the guy that caught the big fish, he's about to drive me nuts. I mean, I get along with everybody, but he wouldn't listen to me. And he kept on throwing the bait out, you know, and we're fishing for the small fish, and the small fish start eating, and then all of a sudden, boom, boom, you know, you see what you know was a big fish. Put a big bait on, let it sit out there, and he kept on reeling in. And anybody know Dave Marquette in here? I heard Dave yelling at a guy one day, and Dave is a cartoon character that's famous. The guys that you don't know, aren't from around here, believe me, this guy's a cartoon character. But he's a dear friend of mine, but this guy, he says it right, and I'll try and imitate Dave for those of you that know. Do not apply any type of action to that bait. It is alive. Okay?
That's pretty damn good nuts.
Yeah, okay. That's a good date. I can't wait till you retire. I'm gonna roast him bad. But he, and I've known Dave for 30 years too. He's a good guy. But that's the truth. And this guy kept on, you know, I mean, I don't know what he was doing. He's feathering, you know, and putting a loop in his, I'm like, see that loop right there? It's gonna break the rod if you get a big fish. Anyway, but what you really have to do with a lot of these big fish, because they're not going to eat all the time, but if you let that bait swim, pretty soon it's going to swim the right way in front of the fish, and the fish is going to say, you know what, I've had enough, I'm going to eat that fish, that bait. So, anyway, it's painful sometimes catching these big fish. Sometimes you catch 5 or 6 of them and you're like, man, it's a great day. But most of the time when you catch these fish, it's 1 or 2 and you have a very limited window. So I try not to get fixated on catching the big fish. Now I have some people that it's all they want to do. And I'll be honest with you, you know, probably 50% of the time when we're fishing just for giant snook, I mean, we're talking about, I've got a guy that you've seen a guy that's on here a lot. And I apologize. I've got hundreds and hundreds of pictures. Last night I just threw this on my new laptop. But this guy, a 38-inch snook, he doesn't take a picture of it. Boom. He doesn't take a picture anymore. It's not. He knows. He's not. You know, it's not that big of a deal. Sometimes he'll take a picture of a big, you know, mammoth. You know, because I look at fish. I look at a big snook. like that snook right there, that was a 38-inch snook, but it was a big, fat, big beat. That guy's a big guy. Okay, the guy that's holding it is a big guy. So, a lot bigger than that fish. And that fish is just as long as that other fish. You know what I'm saying? So, I look at a fish as being, you know, like Shaquille O'Neal or Manute Bol. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, you have different body types. I mean, some of them are just men, you know, and some of them are boys. So, anyway. Live bait for, I try and keep my terminal tackle as small as I possibly can. And these guys here they weren't buying it. And I mean, they're like, we use striper fish, we use bigger hooks and all this kind of, like, no. Generally I use a 1/0 hook. I'm not a big fan of circle hooks when it comes to large fish, okay? I don't like circle hooks. The only time I like circle hooks is when I've got a ladyfish, piece of a ladyfish that big on the bottom, and it's in the rod holder, and I'm waiting on a big fish to eat.
Why?
For some reason, and I did a show with Bill Miller, and I proved it. And you didn't see it on the show because Bill was not going to show this, but he lost 5 big fish in the time that the other guy on the boat caught a couple. And what happens with these, you know, a circle hook is designed to find its way into the corner of the mouth. It's a great, I mean, it's a great thing. I mean, it's
They're kind of idiot-proof, aren't they?
very effective. Yeah, but what a snook does is the way a snook eats when the snook is eating aggressively is anybody who's held a snook in this room? Okay, all right. It's not easy to hold a snook. Even a snook that big is easy. It's hard to lip them. It's a strong, you know, they have a very, very powerful gill system, okay? And what they do is when they eat, you said their mouth, like that big snook had a mouth about that big, you know, but they fold up like a pike. So they have a kind of like a beak looking shape when the mouth is closed, but it just folds up and then it opens up really, really nice. So what happens is when they eat, they flare their gills at the same time the mouth opens, and what happens is the water just rushes right through into their mouth and through their gills. And you can even hear them. Who's held a snook and you hear click, click, click? I mean, it's a powerful, it's a machine. Snook's a machine. So what happens is they suck that in, and you know when you're thinking it's not a walleye, and it tastes pretty good too. So it tastes pretty good too. But when a snook eats, that bait might move like 10 inches, and you know, and that's what you feel, that thump, and you'll see. I mean, when you're watching, I tell my people, watch that line on. I use a lot of high vis line, which is, you know, the yellow. The yellow line. Yeah, and I like to tell these guys, just like Dave said, you do not need to apply any action to that live fish. It has fins, you know. I mean, he'll go on. I've heard it a million times with him. But what happens is, if you let that line, that high vis line, even if you got a big loop in your line, you're going to catch more fish just watching that line and letting that bait just do what it wants to do, okay? And you'll see, we're talking about that strike, that line will straighten out. When a big fish, I can see when a small fish eats, and I mean, sometimes a big fish will eat subtly too, but I know when I see a big fish eat by how much line gets gathered. I mean, sometimes it'll go from a loop to like straight, and okay, reel the slack and set. The reason I don't like circle hooks as much as I like J hooks is because as quickly as they suck it in, a big snook will have a tendency. How many people have had a bite on a snook and it just all of a sudden your sardine comes back and it's scaled. You know, it's totally scaled. If something's not right and they feel that, they'll blow it back out. So that, I tell my people, you know, reel the slack and set it, you know, not a bill dance through the back, you know. Here's another thing too. That's 25-pound braid. Listen, let me tell you something. 25-pound braid will break just like that if you set it against a 40-inch fish going the other way, like bill dance. Okay. I tell them to straighten out the hook, straighten out the line, reel the slack, straighten it up, and just give it a Hank Parker. I call it a Hank Parker. Anybody ever see when Hank Parker showed the bill dance fall out of the boat versus just a short? There was more power in the short, concise, nice, you know, short set. So anyway, so that's why I like J hooks versus circle hooks. J hook size that I use the most is probably a 1/0. I like, Walmart used to carry owners, Gorilla Light, and they stopped carrying them. I've got a few of them, but my second choice, I like them because I don't like an offset J. They have a tendency to foul hook a lot. I like a straight J. For some reason, they don't stick back into the bait as much. The offset, the other good hook that I really like though, and it's a little bit smaller gap than the owner Gorilla Light live bait hook, is the Gamakatsu live bait. The Gamakatsu live bait hook is a very nice hook. I mean, when you guys look at it, and this leader needs to be retied. I got some tying to do. But I don't know if you can see how small that hook is. It's got a piece of sardine on it too. But it's pretty small. So and these are the Gamakatsus. So anyway, what do I look for this time of year? Well, right now, if you can get bait, that's the first thing that's really good. But don't, and I'll talk to you about you know, artificials. I can talk to you about it for an hour. I don't know, for a couple hours. It doesn't matter. But I mean, what really right now, if you can get bait, you're kind of a step ahead because those fish haven't eaten all winter time. It's been a really crappy winter too. I mean, it's been one of the toughest winters I've ever fished. So I've been guiding for 23 years, and I think the last El Nino was pretty tough too. The last El Nino, and of course the winter of 2010 was not even. I don't want to bring that up.
Don't bring that up.
Yeah.
It's not good.
That was but the last El Nino was worse than this last El Nino as far as fishing. It was a lot of grass died because there was a lot more rain than this last one, and the sun just couldn't get down. You know, and there was nothing to keep the grass, what little bit of grass you have in the wintertime, alive. So it was pretty bad. But anyway, live bait. I like being in, and a lot of you guys know this, so I'm not talking down to you, and I'm not, you know, but where do you want to be this time of the year? I like being in the creeks. These fish have been back in very controlled, and I call it a controlled environment more than anything else. These fish are back in the residential canals, way back in the creeks where you don't have, there's not a lot of, you know, when it blows like crazy, it's not really cooling the water temperature down this deep. So they're down in the water column. They're in the area that's going to be affected the slowest by whatever kind of weather event you have, if it's a cold northeast wind or whatever. Okay, so residential canals are great too because you've got the radiation of the heat of the sun coming into the water, you know, so that's another thing. And in all these areas usually have a, you know, like the muddy water in Mirror Bay back here, in the canals back here. It's muddy. You don't want to even walk around in there. It's all mud. what that mud does is it holds the heat a little bit more. So you got more of a controlled environment. Like the basin over here, when I was a kid, I used to come to there was just one, in Apollo Beach, there was one restaurant that we park at and go and wait around you know where Mirror Bay, that canal goes back in there?
No.
When you pass that, when you pass that big opening there, and there's the basin with all the sailboats and everything. I think there's sailboats in there and stuff now, and houses around. There was no houses or anything, and that was one of the best spots to go. I don't fish this area that much anymore, so that was a really, really good area because the water it maintained a good temperature in there. So caught some big fish back there. There's a lot of boats and stuff back there now. I don't know if I'm sure there's still fish back there. No, there's not. There's no fish back there. Yeah. Anyway, but.
So you're saying that water clarity isn't a requirement?
No, water clarity, I mean, to be honest with you, water clarity for snook, I like to have it a little bit churned up a little bit.
Okay.
Not churned up to where they don't want to be in it, because they don't want to be in nasty water. But, you know, like right now, just make sure, I mean, I use 30-pound fluorocarbon, all right? And I use diamond leader. They used to sell that at Walmart too. But diamond is very, very, very tough leader. I mean, the reason I use, to be honest with you, if it wasn't as abrasion resistant as it is, 95% of the time in the conditions that we fish in, you don't need the translucency of fluorocarbon. You don't. It's the abrasion resistance that makes it really good. And then when you go to something, you go to like a real supple type, like Seaguar is a great line, but it's kind of supple for me. I want something I can hit, and, break a twig or something with. I want something that's nice and stiff, and nice and, I mean, when you bite into the diamond leader, it's like Mason. Everybody ever use Mason for fly? I mean, it's tough, man. I mean, it's tough. So that's what I'm looking for. If they made a monofilament that was as tough as the fluorocarbon, I use it. I don't care about the translucency. Now there are certain times of the year where I drop down to 25-pound or 20-pound test. But usually that time of year, I'm not really that concerned about catching snook because most of the time they're not going to eat anyway. Or I'm working on artificial, and you're going to get. How many people have noticed that in the wintertime, how many times have you caught snook and doggone plug is on the outside of his mouth? Half the time when they hit that plug in the wintertime, it's out of reaction, and they're trying to knock that thing out of their zone. So, anyway. That's all I did when I was growing up, was fishing artificial. So I didn't start throwing a net until, gosh, I started guiding in '92, and I didn't start throwing a net until probably '90. I knew I threw a mullet net. I mean, but not for bait. So I fished a lot of artificial, caught a lot of snook on artificial, and Don't give up on artificial. We're going to start talking about patterns now. This is really, really important. This will make you very successful as far as fishing goes. You guys know your favorite plug is the plug that you catch the most fish on, right? Of course. It's because you have the most confidence in it. Because you're willing to try with that plug. Well, let me just tell you a couple things that I see a lot of people do, and you guys are, this is a great group, man. I mean, thank you very much for having me here. Mm-hmm. This is a great group, because everybody's listening, and at least I think they're listening. But there's times that I go fishing, and I fished with my grandfather a lot growing up. And we go, and he'd know that there was fish in this pothole, and say in Wheaton Island, okay? And there's this big area, and we'd set up, and we've had a little aluminum boat. We had a Sears Roebuck, 14-foot boat with a 25 horsepower kicker, as he called it, on the back of it. And we'd go and we'd set up, he'd anchor up, and then we'd start plugging. And we'd plug it, I'd never forget, I just get so frustrated. And he'd always tell me, skirt it, skirt it, skirt it. And we'd skirt the edge of, and he was a big time, he loved snook fishing. And we never ate him, we never took him home. But we'd let him go, but he was artificial, but we'd go out there, and we'd cast and work that bait right down, say that this is the pothole here, and there's fish in the pothole, we'd work and cast and work that bait back, And my grandfather taught me what patience really is with fishing. Patience is not so much patience that you're waiting on the fish. You're establishing a pattern, okay? I've been to spots and I see people when they're going and they're fishing potholes on the outside, and they're just going by and they're fishing, not like bank fishing, but they're fishing areas that they know that there's a group of fish, or there may be a group of fish, and then there's maybe a group of fish here, and there may be a group of fish here. And instead of staying on them and establishing a pattern, they go and they throw a couple times, go to the next spot, throw a couple times. Well, what happens is, and this is 100% going to improve your fishing if you do this. Because I've talked to people that I've been doing seminars at the Frank Sargent show since 1994. It's very important that you establish that pattern. Say you're working a zero spoon, and you toss it, and you're walking the dog next to that, and you don't get a hit. And you cast it back out there, you walk that dog, and you walk it by, and you walk it by. I can't tell you how many times on the 6th or 7th time that I've worked that bait by that same group of fish, one of them comes out and eats it. Okay? You're establishing a pattern. Same thing with bait. Bait fishing, I always anchor up and I'll start chumming and I'll put baits out in the water, and even if you don't have chum, you can toss your bait out there. If you know that there's fish, don't give up on them, because that big fish, we sat on that thing for an hour before it ate. I knew it was there, and then there was another one after that was there that we all knew were there, because it was like someone dropped a stick of dynamite in the water. It just boom, Yeah, I'm going to get a 50-inch fish this year. Somebody on my boat's going to catch a 50-inch fish. Anyway, but because they're there and there's Mike, there's 50 to 60-inch fish. You've seen them in this bay. So, it's going to happen. But anyway, establish that. What now?
We're up in the north end.
What, the north end of the Alafaya trestle over there?
North of Causeway.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, but establishing a pattern, whether with a live bait or an artificial, especially artificial. And if you're gonna work, and if you enjoy casting as much as I do, and working a bait and trying to make that thing look as live as you can, it's just, it's fun. It's part of fishing. It's hunting, So, anyway, what do I look for as far as areas? And I'm just trying to give a brief. We could talk for hours and hours about all kinds of stuff, and I'm going to open up the questions real soon, because that's usually the best dialogue. But what do I look for? Snook are kind of tide-dependent fish. When it's dead, how many people have seen snook sitting and there's nothing going on? There's no tide or anything. They're just laying in there. Doesn't happen as far as catching a fish, it doesn't happen very often. You know, I mean, how many people have seen, that's one thing that I hear a lot. Man, I could see them, but man, they wouldn't eat anything. Everybody know what I'm talking about? Well, usually those fish are laying around. If there's no tide or no dynamic situation for that fish to have any reason to not analyze, or, I mean, there's no cognitive thought or anything with these fish, but they are kind of picky about how they eat sometimes, okay? They're not smart, they're not the magical. I used to listen to guys, man, when I was a kid, I was like, man, when I was a kid, you know, in my teens, and I'd go and listen to this, oh yeah, man, it's a smart fish. I'm thinking, man, that's a smart fish. My grandfather's brain is that big, it's not a smart fish. Not a smart fish. It's just, it's got different feeding habits, maybe a little bit more sensitive to its environment, you know, but just different habits. And snook are very, very sensitive to their surroundings. I mean, they know, you don't really have to you can do some subtle things and get them to eat. But anyway, the one thing that, as far as what I'm looking at as far as different areas with snook, I like we're talking about dynamics, and what I mean about a dynamic spot is there's more than one thing going on at the same time. How many people have seen a spot where you have an oyster bed here and maybe a creek opening here, and you know, you got the tide coming in on one side, and then what happens with that? It's the point creates like an eddy going back. You ever seen that before? It's a great spot, because what happens is you see those little glass minnows and all those little tiny baits that are caught in that eddy, and leaves on the top of the water maybe. Man, I look for spots like that. That's what I look for, because it's a perfect area that they can get into and not have to be fighting a current or anything, but they still have current close by. I fish some areas that I fish, and let me tell you something. It changes by the minute in some of these creeks that I fish. I'll fish an area where I've got an incoming tide, I've got a back eddy because of oyster bed up here, and then I've got another dynamic with another eddy over here. So you've got water moving this way, this way, this way, in the same little area, in the same area. And you know what? Those fish are on the edges of those areas a lot of times. I mean, you gotta look at spots like that. They're hard to fish sometimes because you got your line going one way and your bait going the other. But man, I'll tell you, it'll change you if you start looking for stuff like that. But I'm looking for a dynamic spot, a dynamic area, something that's got two things or more going on at one time. It's pretty simple. Pretty simple. So an oyster bed is always going to create, you know, some type of, you know, it's going to change the way that it's going to impede the water basically. So if you can find some type of water impedance where you've got like a relief on the back side of it, great area. Because not necessarily where those fish are going to eat, but drifting a bait by them, they come out and ambush, come back in. Ambush, come back in. So, all right. Yes, sir.
Excuse me, when you fish that eddy, do you drift into it, or do you anchor up and feed the line into it?
Well, usually I like to stay. I've got an XI5 motor guide that I've got a GPS. It's changed my life. I want to tell you, it's changed I don't have a power pole on my boat. I don't have a power pole. I use, and I would like to have a power pole, but the way that, I don't know if you've seen my boat, we fish out of the back of my boat. So basically I anchor on the front, and I've got I can fish 3 people around my live well very comfortably.
Okay.
And we're right there by the bait, and the boat tracks much better. I don't have to do a lot more than, you know, have my trolling motor basically keep us in one spot. So I like, you gotta have, you can't be in the dynamic spot. You can't be in the changing spot. You've got to be in one spot here to where the current is keeping you one way. Sometimes I'll stick a pole in the water and to keep us from swinging around a little bit or something like that, but very infrequently do I do that. But you're casting into the dynamic area, you know, the changing area. Yes, sir.
I have the same motor, and I would
Yeah.
use my pole, my power pole, along with the motor, just to keep me pointing a certain way. or
Yeah.
whatever. You don't find that just the hunting back and forth, that it disturbs the fish at all?
No, not in a deep
Because
water. Not in a
I
deep
think-
water situation, not in a creek. Now, there's a lot, if I'm fishing redfish,
Yeah,
I come up and I'll be as quiet as I can. A lot of times I'll let the wind bring me in. I don't even use a trolling motor and I'll drop my anchor.
do you also shut off your bottom machine so you don't have it pinging?
Very, very rarely do I. I've tried both ways. It doesn't seem to make that big of a difference with inshore fish to me. Now, when I'm fishing redfish in shallow water, everything on my boat is off, except for one pump. I try and do that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you started talking, you mentioned about your lures. You talked about a skitter walker. What else do you use for?
Well, my favorite all-time lure, period, is a Zara spook. I mean, but you know, yeah, and you know, Mirror Lure, I'm sponsored by Mirror Lure. Mirror Lure makes the top dog and the top pup, and they're great. But the thing about a Zara spook is you can get that thing to do stuff that you can't get. I mean, the top dog and the top pup are great. They track real well, but you can't get it to work as erratically as you can the Zara spook. Zara spook, you can do some. There's some times that I'm working. You know, everybody walks the dog like that. You know, and you're walking the dog, and I just let you guys know. Anybody ever watched Jimmy Rogers' Fishing Adventures way back when it was on Channel 8? I did a couple shows with Jimmy. I was friends with Jimmy. He liked the Fred's Fido. Remember the wood Fred's Fido, which was the same thing as a Zara spook. But he and I used to have little competitions. But that was another good one that you could get to go. You know, there's times where I'll be skirting, you know, a spot or something like that, and those fish, the last time if I can't get them to eat, I just reel it in as quick as I can. I mean, it's just skiing on top of the water. You know what? Sometimes they'll eat it. Sometimes they'll eat it, and I don't know why that is. I mean, maybe it's a houndfish to them, or you know, needlefish, or
Instant.
you know. But sometimes it gets them going. But anyway, real quick, Zara spook's probably my favorite. If I had one hard plastic bait to use, it would be the 7M. If that was the only lure that I had, the 7M 18 is usually what I use. I've caught more fish on that fish. You know, I like catching more fish on the Zara spook, but that 7M flutters. It's a floating. A 7M is a floating twitch bait, is what I call it. So what happens is that bait, you toss it out, you let it sit on the water, you twitch it, and what it does is it does like this, and it flutters, and it kind of erratically flutters. There's no real pattern to it. So it's a great plug to use in that much water, or you can use it as a twitch bait and get it down where it's down that far in the water column and it's working a little bit. Now, what I prefer more with a deeper situation is 32M, and it's called a glad shad, or it's a mirror lure of 32M. And this is the 18 color again, and this thing is a very slow sinker, and you can get this thing sideways fluttering. It puts out the most light of any plug that I use. This is my third favorite, but second most effective, I think. 7M, 32M, TT. Those are my top three that I would use. And I'm pretty boring guy when it comes to. If you see my tackle box, I've got this color, the 18 color, I've got the 21 color, which is the same thing as a black, with a silver side and a black back. I've got the 23 color, which is, it's a black back with a gold. And I've got the 11 color, which was a red head and a white body, white silvery body. You know what? Just like we were talking about earlier, it's what I'm comfortable with. Yeah. Now, I like that Zara Spook baby bass for some reason. I like that color, but I don't know if that matters one bit. You know, I mean,
What kind of knot are you tying to that?
I tie loop knot. It's the mirror lure loop knot.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've seen people tie the mirror lure loop knot too, and they tie it real with a big loop. You know, you can pull everything to that, to the loop of the plug, you know. You can pull everything and you pull it away to make the loop. So if anybody wants to see how I do that, I'll do it real quick. I don't have a pair of clippers, I'm sure somebody has a pair of clippers. So, but I'll show you the way I tie it. But
Is that 8-foot rod?
yeah, this is not what I would normally use. I was testing this rod, and I was testing, actually, I was using, I don't want to say it, but I'm mad at Dowell. So anyway, these ballistics are, they last about 2 weeks on my boat. So, but I'm just being honest. So, but then after I complained, they sent me these luvias, and these luvias, there's like 14 of them in the world right now. So these are prototypes, and I've got another set of prototypes I'm testing for them right now. This is going to be a $300. Anybody heard of the Steez, the Daiwa Steez reel? It's like a $600 reel, which is, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. This is a $300 Steez, which is still crazy for me. I want something that could put on my hood. I want something. They used to have a reel called Theory, and it cost me on the guide program. It was like an $80 reel. It cost me $40, and the thing lasted forever. It was a great reel. Now I have to buy a $100 my cost reel, and it lasts me 2 weeks, and I'm like, I'm over it. So, but they do have some nice reels coming out. Yes, sir.
Do you vary the way you hook a whitebait?
Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. And you know, we could sit here and talk all night about little subtleties and stuff like that. But around current, I really like to nose hook the baits. I know some guys, and some really good fishermen that I know, that they belly hook everything. Just right under the pelican fin, right here. I mean, it's just, there's a little spot, you run the hook down and you just go right through, and it doesn't hurt the bait very much, but it swims upside down and it kind of has a tendency to go down. I'm fishing around current most of the time. I like, what happens when you nose hook a bait? You throw it out there and it's in current, and you're going to bring it back and you reel it back, and it swims right back towards you. When, you belly hook it, it's doing this back, it's coming back towards you like that. So application-wise, if I'm fishing a hole and I want that bait to go straight down, even if there's a current around, sometimes I'll belly hook so it goes down into that deeper water column. If I'm fishing just an area that's pretty, stable, it's pretty, there's not a lot of undulation, there's just one, a certain depth or a ridge or something like that, I will generally nose hook them. So, some of these baits right now are big, they're the size of my hand. So I will go up, I said 1/0, but sometimes I'll go up to 2/0. All these fish were caught with that little 1/0 hook. So, with big baits. Yes, sir.
Bobber, no bobber.
That's another good, application wise, there's some spots that I fish. Is there a picture did I get a picture of me and a guy holding a giant wide snook on here? That's a good, I'm sorry. That fish was that I mean, it was like an East Coast fish. And then, you know, I'm not a small guy, and this guy's not a small guy either. And we're both holding this fish. It weighed that one right there. And that's a really weird picture because the fish comes back like towards him. That fish was like right under 48 inches. So, I mean, that fish was, I mean, was a giant fish. I've got some other pictures of it, but the pictures aren't really good. It shows you exactly where you're at. I mean, exactly where you're at. Yeah, I mean, it's horrible, but anyway, you know, going back to the bobber is really, really effective. Really, all that bobber is, I use the little ones with a weight. You can buy them at Walmart too.
Yeah.
And with
Or Mahoney's.
or Mahoney's, yeah. Oh God! You know what? I just realized I'm never going to hear the end of this.
Bass trout.
No, Bass Pro.
Hey, and I'm the pro.
I'm just going over really simple tackle that, you know, that if you're stopping by at midnight like I am sometimes, or 3 o'clock in the morning, you stop and grab something like that. You want to go get some real local knowledge, go to Mahoney's. So,
Nice cup.
yeah.
They are good.
And that's the truth. That's the truth. Those guys been Doug and Matt and Mike. I mean, Mike knows as much as anybody in there. So, anyway. And if they ain't got it, stop looking. Okay?
So what was that float you were talking about?
The float. Okay? You can get them at Mahoney's, by the way.
Right, I
They have a little weight on them, and you just snap them on. They make different kinds. They've got a little cork, and basically you just put them on your line.
it's not a popping cork.
No, it's not a pop. It's a little. I didn't bring one. It's just a little float, and they usually come in red or like a neon green or a yellow.
Like the Cajun Thunder.
Yeah, it's like a Cajun Thunder. Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but really, the only thing I use that for, when you're fishing around current and you got the fish nose hooked and you throw it out. Here's another thing too. We're talking about patterns. I can't tell you how many times that I see people that I've taken out fishing. It's beautiful, but it's not good for them. The fish are over in the corner, right? So usually if the fish are in the corner, I'll anchor up to where I can cast out in front and let the current take. I mean, it's pretty simple. Most people that fish know this. Why is that better than getting up sideways to them? Or there's a couple different reasons, and I'm gonna incorporate the float. So I throw that float out there, and I can see, and all that float really is a strike indicator and a method to see exactly where your bait is. And I use it when I'm fishing. You know, I need it to run a long ways. You know, there's some areas that I fish that I don't want to get close to this fish. I don't even want to get close. I don't want to take a chance, because 90% of the time, I'll be honest with you, I don't know that they're there or they're there. So I stay way, way back. Cast out, have my people cast out, and I get a couple corks floating by. No, you know, I've chummed. I probably know where they're at by now, but it's a good method to see exactly where your bait is. The only bad thing about it, and it's probably the best way to keep a natural presentation on that bait. Okay? When you're fishing deep water, it doesn't bother the fish at all. I mean, it really doesn't. In shallower water, I don't bother with a cork, because it will, I think it's the shadow or something will spook that fish sometime. But anyway, you know, you let that bait go by, and you're gonna have a big loop, because you don't wanna, you wanna give it, because what happens? If you put a little tension on it, starts to pull it out, okay? But that's also a good thing about anchoring up. You don't want to anchor up right in front of those baits, okay? You don't want to anchor up right here, because what will happen is, even if you just drop the cork out, let it drift over those fish, and what's going to happen after you don't get a bite? You reel up, and you reel right over those fish, okay? But they don't know, they're not thinking, oh, That's not natural, but it's not natural. So instincts wise, what happens when you do this? You cast out, that cork works its way, if it makes it past those fish, you reel up and what happens? It goes shh, and you bring it right back. So you're not reeling back over the fish. It's simple, but you wouldn't believe how many people don't. Just kind of screw up there. So, any other questions about corks or fish or?
How do you
Yes, sir.
fish when, go ahead.
How long would you fish one spot before you would move?
People that know me, I mean, it all depends on how bad you want to catch a big fish. The problem is with me is I've got the people. I mean, I don't fish for big snook all the time because it's a pain in the behind. I would rather go catch. I'd rather go catch 30, 40 fish and have a chance of catching a big fish mixed in than sit on big fish all day. Because you know what? Sometimes you sit on those big fish all day and you go home. It's the hero or zero is what it is. You're a hero or yes, sir.
Of course, I'm sure it's happened to everybody here. Coming in, you're working kind of down a shoreline, and you just see them, and then they see you, and they spook off.
Yeah.
How long do you think it takes for those fish to settle back down to where they may start eating again?
Let me tell you, there are times that I actually run over them. I can't tell you how many times I've chummed, and I've run over the fish, and I don't get any bites, and I run over, I'm leaving, all of a sudden, boom, boom, boom. You have a couple residual baits that get eaten.
Right.
It all depends on the sense, you know, if there's a good dynamic situation where you've got water moving and everything, it doesn't take them long at all sometimes. Sometimes you don't know because they weren't going to eat in the first place. You know what I'm saying? It's a very imperfect science that I mean, there's things that you guys have seen in here. I gotta tell you another story. This is the best story. You guys gotta hear it. Does anybody know what a pie-billed greavy is?
Sure.
Little bird.
Yeah, kind of good.
Yeah, real tiny bird. So, the day before New Year's Eve, I'm out with a buddy of mine, and I've got a pot of big fish sitting in this not very dynamic spot. Okay, it's a spot that you have to really sit on, and they are just coming in from a real deep water, coming in as the sun was coming up, heating up the water, and they're coming in from deep water, and they're settling down in this like pothole grass area, and there's 15 to 20, 40, 45-inch fish. Okay, all big fish. So we're sitting on these fish. And I had seen them a couple days before. I don't take regular people there. I take my big snook guy, because when I get the 45 for him, I've got a 43 3/4 for him. When I get the 45, I get a $500 tip, and when I get the 50, I get a $1,000 tip. So this guy, he's serious about catching a big. He's going to catch a 50-inch fish, and that's the kind of person you need. Or you need to get lucky, like the guy that caught that fish that was 47 and 15th, 16th, he's mentally challenged. So I take him fishing 2 or 3 times a year, and I'm thinking to myself, when I saw the fish come out and the head come out, and the head's that big, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, why couldn't it have been Robert that got, Robert that got that? But you know what? He listened to everything I said, and honestly, guys, you catch a fish like that, you need some element of luck. There's got to be some little bit of luck that you have. The leader doesn't fray. I mean, you hook the fish just right, because you get that thing down and close to the gullet there, and he's got all that, rubbing up against that sandpaper mouth. Forget it. You got a really good chance of not catching that fish. So, anyway, we're sitting on these fish, and I'm getting bored, and I'm throwing chum out. I'm throwing chum out. Nothing happened, except the greavies are just going to town, right? intercepting the baits. And I'm thinking, man, is there something we can do? And so I'm thinking, okay, got these little split shots, I got this, but no, I'm gonna spook the fish if I do that. And so throw some chum out there. This is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. One of those little greavies got a little too close into the big snook, and a 30-pound snook came up and whomped it just like, you see a porpoise come up on the side and eat. I mean, it looked like a submarine ate the greavy. Ate it. There was one bird. There was two and there was one. We just sat there and looked at each other like, I can't believe that. I can't believe that just happened. I've never seen that happen. We were just, so anyway, I had to tell you that because that is, if I might be rich if I had that video. I mean, yes, sir.
Snook got a funny feeding pattern, obviously, and you briefly mentioned the East Coast snook. I did a lot of fishing over in Palm Beach, Jupiter Inlet, and stuff. And I remember a night, a buddy and I went out and got there at midnight and hanged up right next to the jetties in the spot.
I knew you were going to say jetties. Jetties were going to come in there.
Groin area there. And we had Mizukis, they're croakers, you know, for bait and all that stuff. We sat there and fished all night long, not a bite. And then this local tackle store guy, who's Lot Brothers, very famous down in Palm Beach, be like Mahoney coming up, pulling up right next to us about 7 o'clock.
Got it, experts. He was
Sat down there and had a damn cup of coffee, and then put their rods out, and we all limited up. Boom! It would all. They knew exactly when the damn fish were going to bite.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It is.
The tide.
It is, and you know, I mean, and there's certain spots like that you kind of know. I mean, I've got some spots that I fish that I know these fish are going to be here on the beginning of the tide, and then in a half hour they're going to settle into this spot for an hour, and then they're going to move slowly and spread out on this, I call a horseshoe, and they're back there for an hour, and then the rest of the tide, they just spread out on they just spread out on a wall, you know, a deep area, you know. So, but you know, the problem is now when I first started guiding, I'd go up and A, B, C, D, you know, and we all can relate to this now. And there's nothing. I mean, I'm not being sour grapes or anything like that, but you know, A, B, C, D in this one spot that you want to fish, you might be lucky to hit C, and you might have to wait on C. So, you know, there's a lot of pressure now. It's harder and harder to catch. There's more big fish, I think. I've seen more big fish after the freeze. I've caught more big snook than I've ever caught, you know, after 2010. A lot of the big fish survived, and a lot of them, you know, there's more, I guess there's more bait for everybody or something. But that's my buddy that we saw the greavy. He's obsessed with snook. But yes, sir.
You mentioned chumming. How many do you throw out at a time?
I've got a live well that if I can put 2,000 baits in it, I put 2,000 baits in it. You know, I fished the other day with 80 baits, but you know, I mean, but if there'll be times like when I was getting bait easy 2 weeks ago, I thought I had enough bait, and we ran out of bait because I was chumming. I mean, I was chumming because the fish wouldn't eat unless there's times I don't necessarily start out by chumming, and you know, I'll go and we'll fish a little bit, and then I'll see if they need a little bit. But some of these fish need inspiration. They're getting more and more accustomed to that pattern, to where they, you know, I mean, I'm serious. There's sometimes I have to chum every 5 minutes, a lot, to get them going again. So it's just, you know, it just is what it is. Yes, sir.
You ever fish with dead bait for big snook?
Yeah. Yes, I have.
I hadn't heard that yet.
All right. You can ask that guy right next to you if you want. consistent. There's places that I use mullet heads, and that's all I use. For some reason, they want a mullet head. And there's spots that you'll put a mullet head down and you'll put a piece of ladyfish down and they'll eat the ladyfish 9 times out of 10 times. You know, I like, most of the time when I'm dead baiting, I use, I've got tarpon gear. I use the Tsunami airwave rods. Mike, I hope you carry them.
I don't want one. Walk right into that.
Anyways, but, and I'm sure there's another, I use a tarpon, a heavy tarpon rod. Usually we'll use 60-pound braid. It's basically my tarpon rig. So I'll use like either a 4,000 or 5,000 size reel, whatever you prefer. And I'll use 60 braid, and I'll use usually about 80 pound. And I do fish some areas where I use 200-pound braid and no leader at all, just straight hook. I'll use the Yamagatsu 7/0. What's that? It starts with an M. Oh gosh.
Maybe is it?
It's the owner circle hook. It starts with an M. I'm trying to think what the name is. Anyway, it's a big beefy 7/0